So I go till 9? No. They think I'm joking. Anyways, recovered alcoholic. My name's Tony.
Hey, Tony.
What an amazing event when you think about it. 75 years of the lives that came here looking for something different than they were experiencing. The amount of sobriety in this room and just the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous it's pretty extraordinary. Those that are new or coming back in the first 5 years, welcome. You know, it's a pretty extraordinary thing here, right? And I'm really honored to be here. I'm really honored to be anywhere, considering, I have a pretty amazing story, so you guys are in for a treat. So, and it is. Why is that? Because I have the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not my story. There's different representations that happen here. And a lot of people represent their own ideas and their own story. And I did that for the first year, 11 years in and out of the fellowship. I thought there was a slogan somewhere that said, figure it out. I really did, right? And I just didn't get this thing, right? I came in here pretty warped. Thank God we don't know how damaged we are when we get here, eh? Really, we have no idea. Like, my cheese and crackers weren't even on the same plate. Like, Joe did an amazing job last night, eh? Yeah, it was really good, eh? He reminded me 3 times about that today, right? So, and Joanne will be a fantastic speaker also tomorrow. Because, after we're done, you should have maybe called this the miracles of mental health, right? So it's one of those things. Sponsorship is really huge. There's not a lot of really new people with the COVID thing, and that's kind of, we missed a notch there for a little while, right? And you see all the empty seats, right? And people are coming, right? They're on their way. They're working on membership right now, right? And when you think of those moments, of incomprehensible demoralization, and you think there's got to be a different way, right? There's one thing for people to have a conversation with you about the problem you don't think you have, right? And then there's another conversation that you have with you in the mirror. I don't know, anybody have those mirror conversations? Many times I've looked in the mirror and go, what's the matter with you? And wait for an answer, right? So nothing comes, right? But the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous is an amazing place to start, right? And the representation of what we do here is the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's our job to stick to those guidelines. It's so subtle how things change, right? And when we don't stay diligent and we don't stay challenged on our responsibility, then what happens is who pays for that is the new person coming into the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. Nowhere in our literature does it describe the fellowship as the program. Why do I say that? Because I always thought I was coming to the program. And if I just did what I heard, well, what I was hearing, what you're saying was probably 2 different things, right? And you know what? I didn't get this thing for a long time, but my first introduction to AA, I was 16 years old, right? And the miracle was happening before I even realized it, right? My story is a lot like Bill's, right? The second time he was in treatment, he talks about that desperation, right? He talks about willing to do anything. He talks about what he wouldn't give for a different experience. And he looked at the pain and the anguish of his wife and the people around him. And the doctor talked about, the idea that he might be resigned to an alcoholic death. And he almost welcomed the idea. I don't know, anybody ever been there? Because you're kind of like, how did I get here? How did I do this to the people I love? How do I keep on doing this to me? And I was under the impression that this was a behavioral problem. Really, like my first meeting, I seen the magic in AA because, see, how I got introduced to AA was through my dad, who I just met. He was 4 years sober. And I got 3 stories. I got my dad's story, my mom's story, and my story. And I'm okay with their stories now. I don't need to bring that here, right? But a big part of the healing of that was going through the actual program of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is in here, right? And so what happened was, and just in a real general way, and then, not to get too serious too fast, but kind of set the tone here. I spent most of my life in a controlled environment up to the age of 15 and a half. No, my wife was, she's a normie. I'll get into that in a minute, right? We all have our problems. So she like, God bless her, right? So anyhow, she was reading a couple of my report cards from junior kindergarten, right? If Tony could learn how to communicate without using his fist, right? You know, I learned how to make a fist before I even learned how to talk. Like my dad, where he comes from and what he did, and he got introduced to Alcoholics Anonymous in a sanitarium from another person who was committed for life in a sanitarium, and it was his roommate. He told him about God and a religious idea, and he found Christ in that setting, and that was it. He had this profound spiritual experience. He came to AA, and that's what the message he carried. So when I met him at 16, prior to that, it was like that situation Bill was in, right? That gift of desperation without a solution is still desperation, right? And so I remember I was standing on the 18th story of a building thinking about jumping. I was on a 3-day drunk and 15. I'm thinking, if I got to live the rest of my life like this. So you can only imagine the anguish without getting into the story of the bikers, the mafia, and all that other stuff that I was raised in, and heroin and all that other stuff. I come from raised in the streets of Toronto. So I come from a really horrific background, but I don't think it's a horrific background because that's my neighborhood. I'm used to that thing. I was one of those kids where they talk about, in the doctor's opinion, the warpless lie of the countless blameless children. So my teachers were the heroin addicts, the alcoholics who sat there in their cups explaining the world, and I'd listen to them. And I'd gauge people. I learned how to read people from a really early age. I'd listen to the key coming into the door, what kind of condition they were in, whether to hide or not, right, or come out and play. Like I was one of those kids where the glass would be smashing all over the place, and I'd be drawing, just watching. Do I run? Do I hide? I don't know if many people. You know, the environment that we bring, that stuff, and we really don't realize the impact, but it's a huge impact. So that was my environment that I kind of raised in. So when I came to my first meeting, I met my dad. He brought me to a speaker meeting. He was speaking, I think. And what the amazing part about that is, the story I heard about my dad was he was a real piece of work. And we were living under an alias, so my dad wouldn't find me. Last time I seen my dad was he tried to obtain me with a gun from my mom and blah, blah, blah. Long story. So that's really, oh my God. Yeah, that's kind of my natural environment. So when I got the call when I was 16, this guy, I was working on membership without knowing it, right? It was my 16th birthday. And I was really indulging in some things that I was mostly experimental. Boilermakers, I don't know, tie stick, little purple things that kind of gave you insight, right? And other things that kind of enhanced things. And so I was working on altitude, because it wasn't attitude, it was about altitude. And I was just like, wow, I was in a zone. And this phone rings, this guy goes, hey, how you doing? I'm looking for this guy named Tony Robertson. I just found out what my name was because we're living under an alias, long story short. And I said, well, hey, the phone book's full of guys with that name. What's your problem, pal? He says, well, I'm your dad. And when I sat down in the chair, I went, holy shit, is this happening? Like, it was live or Memorex, right? I was trying to kind of gather what was going on and try to absorb it. He says, I'd like to meet you. He says, I'm a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'd like to make amends to you and your mom. I don't know what amends means. I don't know what a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous means. I don't know any of that. All I know is I'm going to meet my dad, right? And I'm going to have somebody in my life finally that I could have for me, because I had, without getting into that, nobody. I had to learn how at a young age to depend on myself. Because if you had to depend on somebody else, you'd always be disappointed. So I met this man, which is really cool, because just prior to that, I was standing on that balcony when I was thinking about killing myself. And my dad shows up in my life and introduces me to Alcoholics Anonymous, which is really kind of strange, is because when Bill was sitting in the treatment center for the second time without a solution, he kind of had that gift. And then Ebby showed up in his life. Kind of weird, right? That Bill didn't call Ebby, Ebby called Bill, right? And that's how this message got carried. And the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous started with the observation of this doctor seeing that Bill acquired certain ideas that he put into practice. So in the third time in treatment, he acquired certain ideas that wasn't present the first two times. which is kind of interesting because this treatment center with Dr. Silkworth, his method seemed to work with a lot of different people, but it didn't seem to work with these particular types of people, right? And these types of people that he comes to describe as beyond human aid, Bill Wilson, right? And he witnessed this thing take place in his facility, and he welcomed the idea. When you think about that, it's pretty wild in 1934, right? Just prohibition just ended. Right, and they already have a treatment center for us. Right, here we go. They're coming. It's kind of like build it and they will come. Right, so it was kind of like, so it's kind of wild that this doctor witnessed this thing happening. This, and they call it in the book. It's really an unexplainable event. It's a phenomena that these people put certain things into practice, that it creates a change that all people, places, and things, and even the applicator wasn't able to bring about by themselves. Right? It created the psychic change or spiritual experience. And that started becoming the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Ebby took Bill through the steps, which is kind of interesting. And he promised him when these things were done, he'd have the elements of way of living that answered all his problems. And that was the start of this thing. It says there's something seems to be here. And imagine getting Bill to work with other patients in that facility. That got to be quite the impact. Third time there, he sees this profound change from acquiring certain ideas, and he put that into practice. And today, that's the same thing, 2022. Right? That's the message of Alcoholics contained in here. They put it in such a way that would be all-inclusive, not exclusive. That's why the wording is so important, the idea of this thing, the presentation of this thing, and that's our responsibility. Right? And so, I didn't get that message. But I got the feeling of hope that was here. I knew there was something here. I knew I didn't have to live the way I was living anymore. When I came into the room, something inside, like I can't explain, it wasn't up here because this was a bad neighborhood. But in here, there was something that kind of gave me the idea that maybe there was a different experience for me. And I tried to create that experience. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. I listened to how it works. It says, may you find him now. I said, I know exactly where he is. I went back to the Baptist church. I didn't understand what they were talking about. But listening to people and their ideas, I figured, I love that guy, what he was saying earlier about the book. Awesome stuff. Getting back to the book, right? So what happened was I went into the Baptist church. Things were fantastic. I cut my hair. I joined the choir, Mr. Bean. It was fantastic. My life started to improve, just the mere fact that I wasn't drinking. But I didn't understand alcoholism. I was under the impression, as long as I don't drink, I'll be okay. But something started happening when I don't drink. I started getting worse. And I tried to mask it by the chameleon. I don't know, any chameleons here? So, I'm in church and I'm like, things are great and things are fantastic. You ask me, can I share? No, things are great. There was another girl in the church who was there also, who was one of us, and I was able to pick her out of the crowd. I don't know if anybody is able to see that. I seen her, she's seen me, and that's prayer. I'm mistaking that for pray, but it's different, not PR. So yeah, some of you got it, right? So I had trouble with what they meant by higher power, right? Anyways, so she went and got drunk. I remember this, right? And my life's going good. I'm looking at Bible college. I'm going through the Bible. I'm finding God. I'm having a spiritual experience. Life's fantastic. My life has improved dramatically, but not in the sense necessary at the internal level. Just my situation. I was like the guy switching floors on the Titanic. Right? The seat I had before, I could see all the water coming through. It didn't look very good, so I went up to a room with a view, and wow, this is nice, but I'm on the same vessel. I didn't know that, right? And so when she phoned the back when there was no phone, like just phones, she says, hey, is Tony there? My buddy answered the phone, and he was one of the guys we had to kind of travel into, couldn't go unsupervised, something like AA, right? And she answered, and she was drinking. I just heard that tone in her voice, and something shifted in me. And she says, can we talk? I said, I'll be right there. My buddy goes, hey, no, I should go. I said, no, I better go this one alone, right? So I went from in the church, in the choir, singing, to sitting in the field in a car. drinking. She's huffing glue. I'm drinking. Found the love of my life. This is awesome. The bag stuck into her face, and I'm thinking, thank you, Jesus, right? So, anyways, I don't know how. I have a problem with time when I'm drinking. I think we went out for a while. Last time I seen her, she was getting arrested and being carried off. And there goes another love, right? So it was kind of like, and then I was off again. And I'd come back in AA. And I'd hear stuff like, really stuff that makes sense if you don't understand alcoholism. If you don't take the first one, you can't get drunk. Okay, I won't take the first one. But I would forget that. Like, I'd just forget about not taking it. It makes good sense to take it. And so I got 11 years of in and out. 11 years are good enough for like, holy shit, I'm going back to AA moments, right? But nothing in here was sufficient enough to keep me here, right? And they put me in 12 and 12 studies, and I'd hear members, and none of it was book-based. This gentleman was talking about, nobody showed me what they were talking about. They told me what they were talking about. I said, okay, makes sense, because I don't understand alcoholism, right? So I remember this one old-timer, God bless old-timers, right? He goes, he says, obviously you don't want it. He says, what's your problem is discipline. You lack discipline. Good sense. I looked at my life. Of course, I was thinking about this over a drink, right? I was thinking, what's the matter with my life? And I was thinking, where would a guy get discipline? I was thinking, coming up with my own solution based on what he said about getting discipline. And I'm like, waiter, so I'm thinking, what's something seriously wrong here? And I thought, my God, I'll join the army. What a great idea that was. Bad idea. Because you got to figure, and it was hard. I had an afro, it was shoulder wide, back in, Anyways, a couple of really can't. Afro, just a vision for you, like it was like. So I'm at the recruiting office. I meet another person. I keep meeting people like us, but I don't know if they're like us. But there's an attraction to us. There's something like, hey, we could pass 15 normal people just to find us. Anybody? Hey, there's the one with the spinning red light. Hey, how are you? Yeah, I think they call that AA dating. Anyways, the AA foreplay stands for, hey, would you like to go for coffee? Followed by a U-Haul, right? Here's a warning here. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. You're going to be just as surprised as me. I'm not one of those speakers, listen to us tape, moment here. I'm not a theatrical speaker. Mental health, miracle of mental health and Alcoholics Anonymous. So I meet her in the recruiting office. I don't know how long we dated for. That seems to be a theme in my life, but it was long enough that she invited me to her place for dinner to meet her parents. So I guess more than a week. I go to my buddies in the bar. I'm 18. I'm getting ready for the army. I go to my buddies in the bar because they know life, right? You got a problem, you go to your buddies in the bar. You got your lawyers, your doctors, your marriage counselors. We're all sitting there trying to solve my problem. I says, look, I'm going to the suburbs. I've never been invited anywhere for dinner, right? Give you a rough idea. So this woman's got some class and got me going. So she says, what you got to do is bring some wine. Makes sense. I've never done that before. So I go to the liquor store. I'm going to go buy wine. So I'm a wine connoisseur, in case you didn't know. So I'm looking at the wine. I'm looking at price, which is very important, versus content. So I'm in the 1.5 liter section because I got to go for dinner. So I'm thinking, and then I remember all the times I don't got a corkscrew, and I thought, the house. So I need to get a twist cap. Really classy, no problems there. So I see this stuff. It looks amazing. The bottle was baby duck. I thought, wow. The guy who invented that bottle was an alcoholic. Remember the lip on the top so your hand didn't slip off of it? I know the guy's like, hey, if we're going to bottle this stuff, we got to get those ones your bottle keep breaks. And all that. So it was like the alcoholic who invented the toilet seat so it doesn't hit you in the back of the neck anymore. So anyways. Yeah. Like, we invent shit, right? Because we can't change shit, so we got to, can't change what I'm doing, so let's change the environment I'm in. Anybody? So I show up with her. So I'm going to the till with this bottle, like carrying a baby. He's like, yeah, I'm proud, like proud moment, right? And then I thought, my God, there might be other people there that want to drink. So I go back and grab another 1.5 liter of wine. I got 3 liters of wine just to go for dinner, and then I'm going to go meet her friends. She has no idea who's about to show up. And so I don't know how long I'm drinking for. I'm not that sober, but I remember going down the highway on my bike, and I got these 2 gold caps sticking out the top, and they're in the inside of my leather coat. And I'm like proud, I'm proud. I show up at the door, and I open my leather coat and take these bottles out, and she's horrified. She gives me that look, unappreciative. You know that look people give you? I went, what? She goes, you know we're going out for dinner, meet my friends after. I said, yeah, this is just for dinner. So I didn't know then what I knew now. Like, it took somebody 12-stepping me through this. That was the allergy in making sure I had enough to drink. I didn't know that. If you'd asked me why you have that much alcohol, because I'm thirsty. I'm a big guy, and I'm a wine connoisseur, and you gotta. So I don't remember dinner. I remember coming to in this bar that I don't drink in. I come from streets like where I drink. There's no windows in the bar, right? There's all tables and chairs. The door swings both ways for going out and coming in, right? And when you walk through, there'd be broken glass and beer on the floor and the carpet smell, like, yeah, I'm home smell, those places? And a pool table, and yeah, that's my environment, my kind of people, right? So I'm meeting her friends, and as I drink, my sleeves start going up. I roll them up, and I look at her. She goes, what's going on? I say, when I get like this, there's a couple things I like to do. Well, she found the love of her life, obviously. So, and fighting was a part of that, and reproducing was the other. That's all. That's what I thought a man was, right? So I'm meeting her friends, and I'm thinking, and that rodeo song. Remember that rodeo song that came out? This guy says, as I'm walking, the first time I ever heard that rodeo song, he says, jerk, and I remember putting him over a table. That didn't go over well. It was one of her best friends. I didn't know that. I would have treated him a little differently if I would have known that. I would have just probably slapped him. Then I came to driving her car, going down the 400, and she's going, "You're going too fast." I didn't even know I was driving. I come to, I'm looking around, look down the speedometer. How many people ever come out of a blackout? You're trying to figure out what's going on. People are talking to you. What do you mean? I'm just getting here myself. Relax, take it easy, right? So I go, thank God I went into a blackout again. And then I come to, and any porcelain huggers here? I think about that sometimes, and I just go, I used to like how cold it was on your face. And I'm looking in the bowl, trying to figure out what's making me sick. And I'm looking at it coming out of your nose, your vein, you're talking to God. It's like, dear God, right? And I'm looking, I said, no, it's the grenadine, not the wine with the beer, with the baby duck, with the shooters and the zombies and the combination. It was the grenadine. Anybody? Why are you hungover? It was the pop. So I have no idea. And then the last time I seen her, she was trying to open her door, and I was buck naked on her floor because they had tiles in the bathroom. Anybody like tile floors here? Brings your body temperature down. Yeah, and so she never called me back after that. I wonder what happened to her. So I'm one of those drinkers. I don't know how long I drink for or what, how, or whatever. I remember answering those 20 questions. You ever suffer from blackouts? I said, don't remember. So I get in a fight in some army base, whatever. I don't even remember the fight, but I was on the plane going to boot camp, and I'm smelling like vomit still. Anybody? And I got a black eye, and my hair's like this. I got a leather coat on, biker boots. And they sit me, I didn't know then, but they sat me down between the lieutenant and the captain. And I'm like, oh, God, I'm dying. The guy goes, where are you off to? So I think I'm going to boot camp or something like that. He says, oh, they're going to love you there. So that was the longest stretch of sobriety I had, was in boot camp, because you had to wait, I think, 10 weeks before you went to the junior ranks. Well, it was a rough 10 weeks. I mean, so I did really good. And then I went to the infantry, and it was 40 cents a shot, and my alcoholism took off. Like it really took off. I mean, like I got to a point where I started puking blood in my bile in the morning, and I'd have to take 3 or 4 shots just to calm the burning in my stomach. Left with my thinking, and we did the war games. Did really good. I really excelled when I wasn't drinking. Then I hit the junior ranks, and I have a problem with resentment and interpreting things. And I'm a great mind reader. I don't know if anybody has that ability here. And the way people look at you, that look? And those people I seem to concentrate on, that contempt and that look, and they give you that, and I don't know, fixate on them. So anyways, they all started giving me that look, because when you get arrested in the Army, they have to look after you all night and the next day. So my whole platoon is getting pissed off at me. I'm the only guy from the city, so I said, okay. I started building a story. Any storytellers here? I started building a story. They're all smiling at me, I'm smiling at them. And I'm going to get even with every single one of them. That's my MO. You keep smiling. Won't be long until you're not smiling anymore. And when we both think of each other, we're both going to have a little and a laugh, right? So I went on a drunk, and it was 40 cents a shot. I'd drink $20 worth of shots and then go to town. There was 2 towns in Wainwright, Alberta. 3 bars. In Wainwright, Alberta, I think, or could have been 2 bars, and 2 ways to get into 1 bar, which I thought was 3 bars. I don't know. So I got in a fight with one guy in the bar, got barred from there. And then I went back and I loaded up an FNC-1, which is Army Military Assault Rifle. And I'm laughing. I'm emptying the amnesty box with 2 other drunk guys. I know they're on their way back in taxis, and I'm laughing. And I'm looking at the rounds in my hand. Now, this is live, and I put it back in the box. And I take the blanks and I pass it around to my other 2 drunk buddies. And we all confirmed there were 3 empty, blank rounds. I put them in the empty magazine. I put them in the rifle, and I sat on the bed and wait for these guys to come home, and I'm laughing the whole time, right? It's not funny shit, but I'm laughing. They come in, and I just started firing it in the barracks. So nobody found that funny. I kind of same response. I think maybe I have a problem. But I don't see it as a problem. So I end up leaving the Army, honorable discharge. I thought, oh, this guy's not going to Cyprus, Germany representing Canada. Because I couldn't get, they had certain ideas that didn't make sense. Fire 2 warning shots in the air and 1 into the oncoming people. I said, why wouldn't you fire 1 into the oncoming person and 2 in the air? I said, what's the difference? I said, maybe it's not a good idea that you come to Cyprus, Tony. So anyways, I left the Army. Puke and green bile. Discipline was not the answer. So I ended up back out doing what I was doing, back in the streets of Toronto. And situations started getting my attention because the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing, I didn't have no way to deal with the past, the anticipation of the future. Every time I tried to get sober, I was stuck with me. And had no way of dealing with me. And I had some deep-seated stuff, like the trauma and the abuse and all that stuff where I come from. I had no way of dealing with it. And I just let it go, turn it over, all that stuff. Smiling in the meeting, acceptance, can I share? I had the chameleon kind of point. I'd kick the cat through the screen door, hypothetically in my mind, and go to a meeting and talk about how great I'm doing. How the promises are coming true by doing nothing. I'm sitting in these 12 and 12 studies. The Queensway group was my group in Toronto. My dry date was in pencil. I couldn't get sober. In pencil, because they kept on rubbing out the page, where they keep tenants. Anybody coming back? They're just all like, I'm not even here back yet. I'm still drunk. Case of beer, dog, right? I got a flag sticking out of my pocket, vision for you, nuts. Because one of the meetings was in between my place and the beer store, and I'd come to in the meeting every once in a while, heckling the speaker. You're full of shit. Love you, Tony. Keep coming back. Kiss my ass. Right? So, I think the problems other than alcohol, maybe, right, are just nuts. But I didn't know that, right? I trusted nobody in AA because I didn't trust my dad. I didn't trust nobody because backing up my dad was my hero in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I ended up getting a breach of probation and I was supposed to go to trial. And the reason I got a breach of probation because I was going to see my dad all the time in Cambridge, and I was getting introduced to AA and this new way of life. So my dad said, don't get a lawyer, I'll come represent you. And I'm working at Douglas Aircraft, I got a great job, my life's taking off. And I stood in the courtroom explaining who my dad was, and he didn't show up. I ended up getting 3 months, but that just re-solidified that I can't trust nobody or nothing, right? And you guys are all talking shit just like everybody else, right? Yeah, man, put on the suit. I know what you do when no one's looking. Because remember, I grew up in that lifestyle with those people done under the newspaper as a kid growing up, shooting heroin in the other room, turning tricks downstairs, right? And then you tell me you guys are all these beautiful people. I never experienced that. Right? And then the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous started happening without my knowledge. These things that happen inside here that change you in a way that you it kind of leaves you kind of, I was at this guy's cake. This is one of those turning points where it started to soften what was happening inside of me, because like I said, I couldn't trust being vulnerable. There's no way I could live by the principles you guys were talking about in the world I was living in. There's no way. Right, so I came to this meeting and I'm detoxing, I'm reading the traditions, and I had an anxiety attack. First time I ever had one detox. I didn't know what that was. And I ran out of the meeting. There was like 200 people in this meeting, the Queensway Saturday Night group. And what's significant about that is because there was this guy there who just took a first-year cake, and I was at his cake, and I was really impressed with his story. I was feeling really good, and then this guy stood beside me and says, oh, you don't want to mess with that guy. He's a Golden Gloves boxer. He's tough. So every time I seen this guy in my head, I said, you think you're tough? He's smiling at me, I'm smiling at him. Yeah. I'll take the street to you, man. I'm smiling at you. Good to see us. I bet you it is. So, nuts, right? Formulated one-sided argument. And nobody's ever done that here, right? So I had this panic attack, and I ran out of the meeting, and I'm hyperventilating, and I said, what the hell's going on here? 200 people in that meeting. I feel this arm around me. The guy goes, it's going to be okay, man. I've been there. Guess who it was? It was that guy. It taught me something very, very valuable. Be careful of the people you throw overboard, because they may be the people that pull you back into the boat. Right? And how the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous works is like a phenomenon. You never know who the person is that's life you may be saving. Right? It may be not significant, but it kind of sat with me, that moment of genuine empathy and love. I never knew that at the time, but it gave me that feeling of comfort. Like this, I had a guy's arm around me, and I felt okay with that. It may kind of sound weird, but where I come from, that stuff don't happen. Right? I mean, if I'm handcuffed to you, that's a different story, right? But anyways, moving on. Not that kind of meeting. Anyways. So I'm trying to get sober, doing all this stuff, and I remember this old timer goes to me once. He goes, oh, he says, your problem is, I said, I'm going to this party. I'm a couple weeks sober again, or a month. And I don't want to drink. That's the funny thing. I don't want to drink. If I had to do a check-in with self, do you want to drink? I do not want to drink. So everybody goes, good, you're good to go. He says, so if you go to this party, make sure you hang on to a ginger ale all night. That should be on the 20 questions, right? So I'm hanging on to this ginger ale. He says, if anybody asks you if you want some, just tell them there wouldn't be enough for both of you. I found a solution: alcoholism. So I go to this party. You know how we are when we're not drinking. We think everybody should know we're not drinking, right? I'm walking around with this glass in the air, like, and then by the end of the night, we know, Tony, if you had one, there wouldn't be enough for both of us. So I'm sitting in the chair, kind of no one left to tell that to. This guy shows up. He's working afternoons. He sits in a chair. I remember, it's like a photograph in my mind. He goes, what are you drinking? I said, ginger ale. Finally, right? And he goes, well, he says, you want a beer? I said, oh no, if I started, there wouldn't be enough for both of us. He says, I got 6 flats in the back. I guess it would be. I staggered out of that place. Not knowing what happened then is the malady that centers in the mind that they talk about, the second symptom in alcoholism, page 23, this thing that places me beyond human aid. So if just the sense of that and the understanding of that would have told me that all my efforts wouldn't be able to save me from me. Because I don't have a behavioral problem, I have an illness, but I didn't know that. And so, long story short, I did something that was horrific and kept me sober for 16 months. And then, I got into a bar fight with one of my best friends. I won't go into it. But that episode was enough to keep me sober for 16 months. Because when I was sober, I was fear-based all the time because I had adults, older people always beating me up and really doing horrific things growing up and stuff like that. So I'd study martial arts, boxing, martial arts, so fear-based and all that stuff. And then without getting into a whole bunch of it, I really hurt my friend, right? And I love this guy. Like, without getting into the whole story, he was one of my best friends. And what I did to him really horrified me. And that kept me sober for 16 months. And every time somebody would say, would you want a drink? I remember what happened to me. But what was happening was I had no way of dealing with me. And I was self-medicating with other things just to keep the demons quiet. Just so I could be comforted in my own skin. I didn't know about outside help. I didn't know about doctors. I didn't know, because I wasn't getting a lot of numbers from people in AA. I know it's hard to believe. There wasn't a lineup of people looking to help me, right? It was like I was... First thing I learned was the traditions, right? This is not a bar, Tony. You can't throw around tables. You can't threaten people. When the person's speaking, you got to allow them to speak, even though you disagree with them. So what kind of organization is this? Anyways, so this lady goes to me. She goes, she wanted a little something for your coffee. It was in 1985. And I remember going, no. And then I said, sure. And she put something in my coffee, and that started a 2-year run where at the end, what ended up happening there was I was sitting in my place. The sergeant just visited me from one of the divisions. And he said, this is a courtesy call. I'm not without the riot gear and the police. I was under observation, blah, 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 blah. So the sergeant showed up and says, not everybody makes it to the station, Tony. I thought I'd just give you a courtesy call. So I was sitting there, and all the furniture is going on. I'm talking to a painting, and the radio announcer on the stereo, he's playing all my hits. Like I'm out there, and I'm having a good conversation, partying by myself. I'm getting notices on the door for excessive noise. And so that's kind of nuts, just kind of nuts. And I remember sitting there thinking, God, I need some help. I really need some help. I'm not getting this. I'm in psychosis and all that other stuff. And I'm looking at penitentiary time, because I was under observation. Without getting into the whole story, I just got kicked out of a group of people I was involved in because they thought I was a little too, for them. When you got those kind of people telling you, maybe you should go back to AA, Tony. You're a nice guy when you're sober, but when you're drinking, something's seriously wrong with you in a confirmation, right? Now, sitting there and the phone rang, and it was my brother that I haven't heard from in probably at that time 3 years. He was living out here in Vancouver. I told him what was going on. He says, when do you come out here and start a new life? So I came out to Vancouver. I detoxed on the way here. And it was brutal. I remember this Wednesday, I couldn't drive anymore, so I pulled over. Don't know much about camping. And I camped in a ravine. I put my tent in the ravine. This looks like a safe place. And it started raining, and a river was running through it, right? And I'm so sick in this tent, I'm lying in a sleeping bag watching the water run through, and I'm getting sick from both ends. And my girlfriend said, you'll be all right. I said, no, I won't be all right. Anyways, that was my introduction to Vancouver. So I got here, and she ended up going back for domestic violence, and I won't get into that. Danger to myself and everybody around me. So I get introduced to the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous out here. And I got introduced to 12 and 12. I got introduced to everything but the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. I went to the men's wine and snivel step study, sat in these 12 and 12 studies. I was in 4 12 and 12 studies. My last relapse after living, I got out here in 87, 89. I'm living in Alcoholics Anonymous. I just did 360 meetings in 90 days. And April 6th was my birthday. It was a Thursday, and I talked about what a great job I was doing. April 7th, I went back and talked about what a great job I was doing. April 8th, I got a 3-month chip, and I gave the best Academy Award talk you ever wanted to hear on self-based recovery that there was. And see, what started happening was the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous without my knowledge, without my understanding, was because there's a guy named George and Machine Gun Jerry. I don't know if anybody knew him. He used to go through the fellowship with a couple of his cronies looking for people who were dying of alcoholism in AA. And he would invite you into a private home group right? And so George went into this group. I used to look at George to feel better about myself. He had a big red nose. He was shaking. I thought, if I ever got that bad, I am that bad. If I ever get that, I'm puking green bile, cutting my own hair, unemployable. But if I ever get that bad. So they got him in this study. And then George started working with me without my permission. We don't, he says, if you show up in a meeting, that's consent. He started working with me, and because he had the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous happen in his life. He had this transformation, and part of ensuring his own sobriety, he had to go work with other people. And so he was told to go look for the sickest guy he knew. He wasn't around, so he started working with me. and I remember George, he came up, he says, that was a great talk. And I'd sit down, he says, what does it mean? So what the hell are you talking about? And I go, what do you mean I'm talking about? Because I'm hanging around with people that sound like me, right? And so he says, well, what are the 3 pertinent ideas? And I'd say them. He says, no, what does it mean? I said, what are you talking about? What does it mean? He says, what's an alcoholic? Oh, the beatings, the stabbings, the jails, the institution, all the camera, private cells. He says, none of that makes you an alcoholic. It makes you an a-hole, but it doesn't make you an alcoholic. And he'd walk away when he says these things, and the guy started driving me nuts. I'd see him coming, it's like, if you got those kind of people in your life, pay attention to them. They're trying to save your life. Participate in what they're doing, right? And so George goes, I just relapsed. Oh, by the way, April 8th, I took a 3-month chip, and I was drinking an hour later. I just did 360 meetings. So George says, you've been around a long time. I said, yeah, almost proud of the fact that, yeah. He says, you're quite knowledgeable. I said, oh, yeah. I could go on to great lengths about shit I have no idea about, right? Hell, I'm running a 12 and 12 study, right? I didn't even know who John Barleycorn was. I thought, poor guy, right? I didn't know. We're normally people that would not mix. Me neither, straight. I had no idea, right? Now the acid test. Oh boy, I think I'm going to like this place. Remember, I'm interpreting what I'm hearing. Like, I'm not well, right? If you want what we got, does it take penicillin to get rid of it? I'm sitting there thinking this stuff. I'm new. I'm nuts. Like, I'm thinking AA is a good idea. How's that for nuts? Right? Thinking it's the worst thing that ever happened to me was this organization. Anybody, watch new people come in. Let the sentence begin. And we're happy to see you, right? Yay! Right? We're more excited for you than you are for you. Because we know what's available here. We know that this is the miracle that this thing is available to you, but it's up to us to carry it to you. Because there's no way you'd find it with both hands attached to your ass. No way. Right? What am I looking for? If you want what we got, well, you've got a good-looking girlfriend, and I like your job, and okay. So I'm still thinking it says figure it out. So George says, when are you coming to help us out? He says, we're starting a new study next week, and we could really use you at our study. I said, yeah, you can, because somebody said I was the most important person in the room, and I always thought that. Some of you still think that 30 years later, right? So I figured, so I go to Chuck, who was teaching me the traditions and teaching me how to conduct myself in AA. That's another story. Chuck, he kind of took a kindness to me, right? Because when he got here, he was handing out traffic violations. He was also. And so when he's seen me, he says, oh, my kind of people. Like when I smile at Joe and Joanne all the time, what do you smile at? I said, now I know what Chuck was smiling about all the time when he looked at me, right? If you got somebody smiling at you all the time, they're grateful to have you. Yeah, I love you. Keep talking. It's okay. So they invited me into this meeting. And for the first time, this may seem mind-boggling, but for the first time in 11 years, I got introduced to the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. For the first time, a responsible member 12-stepped me into the program of AA. And as I started going through there, something started to happen. Right? I bought into the ideas that their experience. I found out what the collective experience of and their understanding of was step one, and I concurred. I conceded that I had this thing and I was beyond human aid. Then they told me about this power that was available to me. Not my understanding of God. They said this power that's available in each and every one of us is available to you through this course of action. I could choose my own conception, meaning the new idea of a plan. Right? And if I was to buy into this thing, I would have what they had. And they told me it was a life beyond anything I could ever imagine. They undersold it. But as they were selling it, I thought it was beyond comprehension. Are these extravagant promises? I definitely think so. Right? Because there's two groups of people. When you read step 1 off the wall, you're talking about people who were powerless over alcohol. If you're new, you are powerless over alcohol. It's two different experiences. These people have a different experience than what I'm bringing to the table. Right? And they took me through We Agnostics, and they said this thing was available deep down within. And I bought into that idea. And what it did was, for the first time in my life, gave me a spiritual basis of going through life that I was able to deal with me on a level playing field. And so how they interpret that to me was that there's somebody who's been trying to kill you, Tony, and you need witness protection from you. It made sense, but first you got to rat yourself out, which would, like, if I'm the only witness, I'm not telling you nothing. Right? Like, I learned that at a young age. Like, and if you remember my name, I don't know if I don't want to talk to you anymore, right? It's kind of like, hey, Tony, good to see you. Who's that? Oh, so that's like, so when they told me this stuff and I started going through the 4-step, and I learned the recipe for mastering resentment through prayer and the ability to pause, that the 4-step was the basis for step 11 on this relationship that was available to me on a daily basis. It says what we need to get you into is step 11 so you can start doing your 9s as you work with other people. Right? So I got into a big book study right away. I finished in a private home, and we started the Burnaby Fellowship, the But Big Book Study Workshop. Bring your own BYOB meeting. That's like, bring your own book or bring your own bottle. I don't care, just show up, right? And I was playing these tapes, and that study went for a long time. And then we went through, and I started looking after my past. And I remember one Friday night, I think I was 11 years sober, and something said, why don't you start a big book study workshop? I was going through a hard time, and they said, why don't you just start a big book study workshop at the Delano Club in Vancouver? And I said, nobody likes me. And this voice says, it's not about you. And I sat there with 6 sponsees. We started going through the book, and they started taking other people through the book, and it grew to, before the pandemic, it was the biggest big book study workshop in Canada. We'd get people being dropped off there. We started the one in Langley. And what I would do is go through the fellowship looking for people who were like me, dying of alcoholism, that didn't know what they were looking for. And I'd start working with them without their permission. They'd see me coming, and I'd, hey, what's happening? Hey, wait a minute. They said, shit, this guy. Yeah, this guy. All right, I became one of those guys, right? Because you know what? It was my responsibility to carry this message to those who don't know what they were afflicted with, right? And I've watched that lineage, right? Because my sponsor actually isn't the person who 12-stepped me. My sponsor is the first 100 men and women. He guided me through their experience. My lineage is connected to this. This is my manual. This is my itinerary. When in doubt, I go back to this. That leads me back to a power greater than myself that enables me to have the same experience to build it. It was a way of living that worked in rough going. And I started watching the miracle of God show up in my life. Unexplainable events, like me being able to recover from an illness that was killing me on a daily basis. To have a transformation beyond anybody's expectations. For the people around me to start experiencing the promises before I did. My family started having new freedom and a new happiness. I watched God show up in my life in ways that just defies explanation. But I was willing to trust God with things that were beyond my comprehension on how I was going to deal with them. And this power, they told me, is available to anybody, and so is this experience. The beauty of this thing is step 9 is the experience of the introduction to the power of God in our lives, where the miracle and the impossible becomes possible. The seeing how God's fingerprints start showing up in situations that were beyond comprehension. Like when I was looking at that penitentiary time, I trusted God with that because somebody told me, hey, I wouldn't stand before any power that was greater than the power I served. And I went with that, and I ended up, all those charges got dropped because it was a conflict with the Charter of Rights, and I walked away with a failing to appear. That's not, my lawyer said you must be kissing angels. He says, I've never seen anything like this happen. right? And you kind of think, oh, okay, yeah. And then I watched situation after situation. I remember in early sobriety, I was going across Canada to go and make amends to a family that I didn't think they wanted anything to do with me, because anyway, that's a whole different story, but I had a preconceived idea about them. So I took a bus from here to Quebec on my mom's side, and I stopped at all these bus stops and said, any friends of Bill W? This is way before cell phones, right? Looking for the thing. All I had was this Walkman with cassettes in it, the Grapevine and the book, and they told me to sit in the front of the bus, right? And I'm sitting in the front of the bus, and the closer I'm getting, the crazier I'm getting. Anybody? So I'm doing the prayers, I'm doing this stuff, and on page 63, they talk about this contract between us and God. And so what happens was, as we got closer, I started calling God out, So you said you'd look after me. I'm not feeling it. Right? Somebody's dropping the ball here. We're having a heart-to-heart. It's the last part of the trip. There's 2 hours to go, and I'm starting to get me all over me here, and it's not looking good. So I'm trying to bring God into this thing. This lady, I said, you said you'd look after me. I'm not feeling this. This lady goes, you okay? She gives me a little nudge. I take off the headphones. She goes, what? She goes, you okay? You know, newcomers, right? When you're thinking, it looks like they're having a seizure, right? And so she said, yeah, I got to go visit these people I haven't seen in 16 years. The last time they seen me, I was dancing on a table. And I'm not related to anybody after 3 drinks. I'm kind of that guy. You're my cousin. It's okay. We're kissing cousins. Anyway, so yeah, some of you identify, So she goes, I'm a long-term member of Alcoholics Anonymous. 20 years. So we're sitting on the last part of that journey on there. I looked up and I said, funny guy. That's exactly. Right? So this whole process is about being able to see what's available here and my limitations to the ability to allow that to happen. And the impossible that becomes possible. Look at this room. When you look at the group of people here and consider where they were sitting, the pain, the agony, the anguish, the despair, the 4 horsemen, and to sit here, right? Is this not the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous? How many people have the story of Alcoholics, right? So I just got chills there, right? So how many people have an amazing story? Yeah. How many people got the story of Alcoholics Anonymous? Yeah. You'll be amazed before you're halfway through. And if you're not amazed, I hear people, yeah, I'm just so thrilled. You should inform your face. So because when you're amazed is like when you talk about passage, no matter how many times you talk about it, you're amazed. Right? I remember going, I'll just be a couple more minutes here. I remember this situation where I took my daughter to Avril Lavigne, sobriety kids, and spent all my money. And I remember reaching in my pocket, and I have credit cards and sobriety, right? Life's good. I got an ATM card, I got all that. But I was $1 short for the C-Bus. And I remember I had box tickets for my daughter. She had posters. She had everything. Proud moment, dad moment, And I remember going, I wonder if God looks after all my needs. Anybody ever think that? And the other part laughed it off, right? Like $1, right? I wonder if God looks after all my needs. So I'm standing at GM Place. It's wide, and I'm standing there like with my daughter waiting for my friends to show up. This lady, probably where the exit is, has to go through all these people and her hands in the air. She goes, excuse me, sir. I was talking to my daughter about this the other day. She comes right up to me, looks right at me. She says, do you have a loonie for this toonie? I said, what? Because that's how we respond to God, right? We pray, it answers what? So if you pray, hang on to your ass. Kidding! No. The funny thing with us is what we pray for usually takes twice as many amount of prayers to get rid of, right? Always praying for the wrong stuff. Oh, God, please. Oh, God, take it back. So, anyhow, I'll close with this last story. And I have 33 years of these stories. And what it does is reinforces to me that this power is available each and every day. The limitation to it is my access to it. The purpose of these principles is to open that access. I don't work on the steps anymore. I work on my relationship. Right? That's what it's all about. The steps are about getting this relationship, and the relationship's what keeps me sober. I have a daily reprieve from the illness that I've recovered from. I no longer deal with alcoholism. I apply these spiritual principles to my human condition. I have a daily reprieve. The problem's removed. So I met this person. Long story short, and I'll close with this. It's pretty one of those stories that just boggle my mind. So my other daughter, she's 30 now. She was out of my life for a while. And when she was young, she was probably 6 and 7, and her mom removed her. It's a long story. And so every day I would get those feelings and those emotions, and I'd pray to God. I said, God, you got this. And when you see it fit for this union to happen again, can you please make it happen and make me ready for it? Right? Because I am a good dad. I was a good dad. My kids were my life. And because of her own personal stuff and what she had to go through and without getting into her story. And so every time that stuff came up, I said, God, on your time. So one day I was living in Burnaby, and I was heading to Metrotown. Some said, go to Metro. I hate malls, right? So I'm going to Metrotown. I get there and something says, and I start having this like anxiety. I don't know how to explain it. It's like an energy anxiety. And something said, just go home. Go home, go back to bed, start over again. I don't know if anybody does. Just go home, start over. So I'm driving down the road, and there's 4 lanes, 2 lanes going this way, 2 lanes going that way, and there's this little kid about 2 years old or whatever, a year and a half, standing at the crosswalk just in her diapers, a little blonde kid. And I look around, there's no adults. So I keep my car far enough back in the lane where nobody could come, and I get out of the car. I say, hey, get away from the crosswalk. She smiles at me, and I get on the phone, I phone the police. And she walks from here again, probably where the doors starts going down the laneway. I'm following far enough back. She walks from here probably to the back of the room where her place is. She stops at the gate. The police are en route. And she stops, she hangs onto the gate, and she smiles at me. She's just smiling at me. I think, what a weird kid. So obviously I'm staying back. She walks in the backyard, goes up to the 2nd story, walks into the door. And guess who comes walking out? Is my daughter's sister, her grandmother. And the police show up. They said, when was the last time you seen these? I said, 2 years ago. And I got back reunited with my daughter. How do you explain that? I'm trying to explain that to the cop. Oh yeah, see, I was praying, and God thought this was the perfect moment to put this kid on the road, to wait for me to show up, to take me into this back lane, and to go up into a house and to reintroduce me to my kid. Where are we going? The puzzle factory, right? I mean, how many stories are there like that? And that is the story of Alcoholics Anonymous. I love you all. Thank you for having me.
Okay, everybody, we're going to have Brenda read the topic, please.
Thanks very much. That was great.
Boomer had those stories.
I know.
Good job.
It was called my sobriety. Joe's and stuff.
We will not regret the past, nor wish to set the wrong. We will comprehend the verse and we will know peace. No matter how far down the scale we're from, we will see our experience and others. That feeling of uselessness and self-pity will disappear. We will lose interest in self-esteem and gain interest in ourselves. Self-seeking will slip away. Our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. Fear of people and economic insecurity will leave us. We will intuitively know how to handle situations which is baffled. We will suddenly realize that God is doing for us what we cannot do for ourselves. Are these extravagant promises?
We hope
No, they are not. They are being fulfilled among us, sometimes quickly,
Yeah, so the dance is from 8:30 till whenever, so we'll just need help moving stuff, like to the side.
Yeah, we're good at moving shit. Don't worry.
Yeah, you are. Awesome, so we'll close this turning for thank you. Oh, the placemats are for you to take home, take a plant if you want, thanks. Okay, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Thank you.
Beautiful job. Good luck.
I had a couple good jokes. I guess God had something different, man.
That was unreal.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's good. When you listen to it, you'll love it.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it came out really good. Yeah. Yellow in the room.
Huh?
You left Joanna yellow in the room. That was great.
Oh, thanks, bro.
Chuck was a big part of my survival.
Yeah, he was a good guy. Eh?
Oh, God, yeah. The back room and the Atlanta Club.
Oh, thank you.
That was awesome.
Oh, thank you.
That was great. Yeah.
Good, hey, brother. Good. Good, thank you. Sorry.
That's okay.
There you go. Good to see you.
Hey.
Thank you very much. It's kind of stuff.
Here. Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Right on.
Where you at? I used to run into him every now and then in movie sets
Oh, yeah, yeah.
when he was doing the setbacks thing.
That's right. That's what I'm working on.
Are you?
Yeah. I went back when COVID hit my business in the room.
Oh,
I
yeah.
went back and, yeah, it was good.
I'm retired.
That's good.
That was the best job I ever did. Okay.
Are you listening this time?
Yeah, nice seeing you again.
Nice, thank you.
It was nice listening to you. This is the second time I'm listening to you. Yeah.
Better? Same?
I remember a few things you said from the last time. So it means I was listening the last time.
Yeah, so that you can explain it to Mom.
Yeah. No, it was nice.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Good. You guys get camping? What do you guys look at? Monday. Okay.
Yeah, you're turning the body.
He used to go to Burlington Heights.
Way back.
Well, I used to live in Burnaby.
Oh,
And I worked at the Safeway at Burlington Heights
Okay, there we go.
a while ago. But we moved 8 years ago. We moved up to Princeton.
How do you like it?
It's different. I'm having an attitude adjustment.
Nice. Beautiful.
So do you know my friends Jerry Willis or
Oh, yeah, no,
Jesse
Jerry.
Pfeiffer?
Yeah.
You part of his group down there? Or go to Arnie?
Huh?
Started the gay group, Arnold?
Arnold rents from us downstairs.
No way!
Yeah.
Awesome. Lawrence Keith Jackson.
And yeah, how you doing, man?
Good. I used to do the step group out in Abbotsford, St. King here.
Oh, yeah,
Keith
okay.
Redmond.
Oh, yeah, good. Well, we did the Tuesday and Friday night big book at the Roundup.
Nice. Down in Vancouver.
Yeah, down in
Okay,
Vancouver.
cool.
Yeah, 20 years we did it. 22 years.
Nice.
Before COVID happened.
Yeah. So
We
we're
get like 100 on a Friday and 60 on a Tuesday.
nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'd love to leave my number and ask you to pass my number on to Arnold.
Sure, yeah, do that.